I want to share with you this evening a story of a man who had a very deep faith. He was someone who taught me a lot about faith and trust in God. His name was Joe, and I met him in 1979, knew him for 28 years before his death in 2007. So it's been 4 years since Joe passed away, and I still reflect and ponder on some of the things that Joe taught me during the time that I knew him. Joe was a man who had struggles. He had what you and I would consider disabilities. He had an intellectual disability, which meant that he couldn't do book learning, the kind of learning that you do in school, very easily. He also spent some time in Polk. His family at one point, Joe couldn't live with his family anymore, and so he had to go to the Polk institution and live there for a few years. Joe also suffered from severe seizures. He had a seizure disorder which he would suffer grand mal seizures, and it had to take a lot of medication to control that. So he had a lot of challenges in his life. But I think one of the greatest challenges that Joe suffered with, he had a temper. I think if you've ever heard the word explosive temper, I think when I used to read that, I didn't always know what that meant until I met Joe. Because if Joe was upset or frustrated or jealous, he could become very jealous at things. His explosive temper would flare up, and slamming doors and throwing his hands up and stomping out, and any of those things could happen during the time that I knew Joe, and that was very difficult for him. But Joe moved into a L'Arche home sometime in the mid-1970s until his death. So I think around 30 years that he lived in one of our L'Arche homes. He came out of Polk and lived in L'Arche. But I tell you the story of Joe because he was a great gift to my life. He had a very visible relationship with God, with Jesus, and the Blessed Virgin Mary. These were three people that he was very intimately connected to. And he would pray frequently to all three, and it was like a conversation. When Joe was praying, he was talking to his friends and really trusting that they were hearing and would help him. So that deep faith and that prayer life taught me a lot about how I want to be in relationship with God. Joe would pray often. He would pray for the people that he loved, his family, his friends. If you asked Joe to pray for you for some reason, you didn't have to worry. You knew that he would be praying for you until you told him you didn't need the prayers anymore. He also prayed out his own struggles and frustrations. Sometimes when you listened to Joe's prayer, you would hear him working through some of those things that were a challenge for him. And he was often asking God for forgiveness for the times that he did blow up or lose his temper. A third thing that he taught me was how he pointed other people to God. If somebody was going through a struggle or had something, he would say, "Are you talking to Jesus?" So Joe had that way, that connection, and he tried to help other people get that connection with God as well. But I want to talk specifically about the last year of Joe's life. He was diagnosed with cancer and went through treatment. It was in remission for a while, but in early 2007, the cancer had returned, and Joe went to the doctor and learned that that's what was going on, and had to face the decision about what to do. The doctor explained it as patiently as he could. "Joe, if you get this treatment, this is what it means. This is the kind of medication you'll have to take. This is what it'll do to your body, and it will buy you another month, maybe 2. And Joe thought about it, talked to his family and his friends, and went back to the doctor and said, "No, I've lived a long life. I'm ready to meet Jesus. I'm ready to go and be with Jesus. I want to live that last bit of time fully and do what I love to do." So Joe, in his trust, said, "I'm ready to see Jesus." He was peacefully accepting his journey, and I think that came out of that relationship he has with God. But I remember in particular, in the spring of 2007, and Joe passed in November, so it was probably 5-6 months before he actually passed away. I said something to Joe when I saw him about getting angry, because I knew that was a difficult thing in his life. And Joe looked at me and he said, "I don't get angry no more. God took the anger away." So the gift that Joe received from God for that last bit of his journey was to have peacefulness in that journey. And we could see that as he prepared for his own passing. He was very prayerful, peaceful, and trusting for those last 7-8 months of his life. So I share that with you because that gift continues to be a part of my life. What I learned from Joe, who maybe didn't have the same abilities I had in learning and speaking and being able to stand up here and give a little talk to you all, Joe far outshone me in his faith life. And that was a deep gift to my own life. And sometimes I even think, I wonder if Joe's gift of deep faith and trust in God is much more valuable than the gifts that I have to give. Joe was a very beautiful man, and we still miss him every day. For those of you that don't know much about L'Arche, we're an international organization, and we have homes where people with and without intellectual disabilities share their life together. Our focus is on trying to create an environment and homes where the transformation of people happen, like myself, who was transformed by Joe, but the ways that we support and mutually respect each other to try and help each one of us have our gifts to give, whether it be gifts of the intellect or gifts of the spirit and gifts of the heart. At the end, we have some brochures for people that want some more information or people around. We've got a lot of L'Arche people spread out. If people want to put their hands up, Linda's already got hers up. So at the end of the worship time, if you have any questions, any of those folks would be happy to answer them. Thank you.